perfectly set up, and I know that it's crazy 8 o'clock on a Wednesday. And just to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your busy schedules. Kobus and I are really excited to present to you about workplace abuse. It's a hot topic, as we know. And it's a really important conversation to be had. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to have it. Yeah, and we've got lots to share with you. And hopefully the objective of today, of this morning, is to demystify some of the elements and how we can assist with workplace abuse as a whole. Yeah. Good. Okay, so from my side, I'm Laura Conradie. I have been in corporate for many, many years. And in the last couple, I've decided to follow my purpose, which is assisting companies to make a better world. Over to you, Kobus.
Good morning, everybody, from my side as well. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Kobus Marais. I've been practicing labor law, starting to show, for about 30 years, specifically also dealing with issues relating to workplace abuse, bullying, unfair discrimination, gender issues, etc., etc. Unfortunately, it is a serious matter, essentially starts and ends in the hardcore legal field, and hopefully one of the issues that we can deal with today and also help is, like Laura said, is to demystify quite a complicated and elusive legal concept.
Thank you, Kobus.
All right. So what we need to do is, one of my favorite books and movies is Dune by Frank Herbert. And one of the older movies starts off with the saying, say, the beginning is the time to take the most delicate care that the balances are correct. So dealing and making a difference as far as workplace abuse is concerned starts and stops with an understanding around a definition. Now, internationally, there are many concepts that are used. There's a big focus on the concept of workplace bullying. We have in South Africa a code, let's call it an anti-harassment code, a workplace bullying code. All of these sort of scientists and different areas have different wordings and different definitions. What we've decided is to go back to source. So in South Africa, we have our constitution. Our constitution gives us 3 important human rights. Number 1, the right that every citizen has to inherent human dignity. Number 2, the right that that all citizens have to a safe workplace or safe environment, and also an environment that is free of risk of harm. The third important element is the right to fair labor practices. So what we've taken is we've taken those concepts and we've distilled them into a definition which we apply then in amongst our clients as the benchmark according to which we operate. But before we unpack it, the important issue here is that making a difference as far as workplaces abuse is concerned deals with 2 issues. The most important is harm prevention or reduction. Okay, if people know that their actions constitute, let's say, unlawful conduct, that it's unfair, if they understand, if the bully understands that his or her conduct literally makes the person sick, causes neurochemical changes, physiological changes, etc., and other human beings, we believe that instances will diminish. That's the first important issue. So by improving, or let's say by escalating everybody's knowledge about the concept, we hope to then materially impact on the instances and diminish or maybe even eradicate that. Secondly, if we still have the instances of workplace abuse, notwithstanding our efforts to get people to not engage in abusive conduct, we obviously then need to take action against that employee. And unfortunately, we then still need to, under that situation, apply the law of evidence. So we need to know what abuse is, and we need to be able to prove the elements thereof. So it's important that we establish this balance. So let's quickly look at this definition is not that complicated. So based on the Constitution, we say workplace abuse is any unwanted conduct, number one, which either impairs or is intended to impair inherent human dignity, and secondly, or which creates or is intended to create an unsafe work environment. Now, the question might be why the intention there. So the issue could just be that, let's say somebody tries to bully, I try to bully Laura, she's impervious to it, and my having said something negative or provocative to her, resulted in me getting a clout over my head, and Laura, being as tough and as strong a woman, an empowered woman as she is, she's not affected by it. Okay. The fact is still that I try to bully her. So it's important that we we have that part of the definition so where there's somebody that attempts to bully but they're unsuccessful, that we can also catch them in the net and manage them appropriately, and in doing so protect other employees that might not be as strong as Laura in dealing with the situation. So the focus is any conduct that impacts a person's inherent human dignity or creates a physically or psychologically unsafe work environment. Let's quickly just unpack the last concept there, the issue of unwanted conduct. This introduces the concept of consent. We're going to get areas where ordinary behavior and extraordinary behavior are separated by very thin margins as such. In other words, if I may be brutal, consensual intimacy, there's nothing wrong with that because you have two consenting parties as such. But at the same time, if there's forced intimacy, that could constitute sexual assault, could constitute rape. So those margins are very narrow. So there comes the concept of unwanted or consent. Many instances as well, what is okay today is not necessarily okay tomorrow. What is okay this minute is not okay the next minute. And what is okay for some employees might be completely unacceptable for other employees. So hence this subjective element that we've introduced in the definition. Okay, so Laura and I talk about the umbrella concept of workplace abuse. That also includes concepts such as workplace bullying, creating a toxic environment, harassment, including sexual harassment, the concepts of unfair discrimination, as well as violence and threats of violence as such. And that is as simple as we possibly believe that we could have made it under the circumstances. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. So the stats are alarming in South Africa. 8 out of 10 people have experienced workplace abuse. And I've found that as we've been delving into it more and more, our reality is it feels like the stats are actually higher than the 8 out of 10. And it ranges across, there's no discrimination of who experiences workplace abuse. We've had conversations with CEOs who said, gosh, you know, the worst year of my life was X, Y, and Z when I was bullied by A, B, and C. So it's across the board, and it's really prevalent. The global stats sit at about 75%, so it is concerning that South Africa is higher. And I personally believe that it's actually even higher than this. We're now going to go into a video just to really unpack, so what is workplace abuse versus what is not. Just give me 1 second. I realized as I came in again, I didn't put my sound on. So please just give me 1 second, and we're going to quickly just share it with sound. Give me a sec. Thanks for your patience. Here we go. So please shout if you can't hear it. I'll tell you when it is running. It's just thinking still, and it's about to go. Okay, you should be hearing it.
Workplace bullying is a serious work health and safety risk. Although it is sometimes hard to identify the difference between workplace bullying and reasonable management action taken in a reasonable way. So what exactly is workplace bullying? The accepted definition is repeated and unreasonable behavior directed towards a worker or group of workers that creates a risk to health and safety. Examples of repeated and unreasonable behavior include abusive, insulting, or offensive comments, aggressive and intimidating conduct, initiation and hazing rituals, practical jokes, and belittling or humiliating comments. Workplace bullying has a significant negative impact on a worker's concentration, their confidence, productivity, and job performance. Being a victim of bullying can cause physical and psychological health problems, including anxiety, high blood pressure, panic attacks, stress, and insomnia. Just as important as we recognize workplace bullying as a risk, it is equally important that we identify what is not workplace bullying. For example, it is not considered workplace bullying if it is a single incident of unreasonable behavior. If managers or supervisors are allocating work or giving feedback on a worker's performance. If the behavior is carried out in a lawful and reasonable way, or if a manager is exercising their legitimate authority at work that results in some discomfort for the worker. One thing's for certain, workplace bullying should never be tolerated. Always look out for yourself, your workmates, and your team members. If you wish to report suspected workplace bullying or inappropriate behavior, please contact SafeWork SA.
Thank you. The next one I'm going to show you another video. And this video was, it's based on research by, I would call him the global expert. His name is Gary Namey, and he resides in the States. And for the last 20 plus years, him and his wife have delved into bullying. So what they've actually done in this video is they've unpacked the types of bullying. And I'd like you each to just reflect on whether you recognize these people as he goes through who they actually are and how they look.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gary Namey, co-author of the book, The Bully at Work. And together with my wife, Dr. Ruth, when we first wrote the book, we tried to summarize all of the thousands of types of tactics that we had heard that bullies have employed against workers. And I'm telling you, it's an inventive, cruel list. It's very, very long. And we knew that we couldn't publish a book with single lines listing all the things that we had heard. So we grouped them into themes, if you will, themes of tactics. And it's often called our bully types. And we have 4 of these categories. And let me explain that a very skilled bully will jump across these categories in a given day, sometimes within a given hour, and sometimes while they're dealing with a chosen target, they will switch gears and try different things too. But of course, the common theme to all types of bullying is that the bully has the need to control another person. So that's what they all share. The first type, which we call the screaming Mimi, is a vein-bulging maniac who prefers a public setting. They're trying to control the emotional climate of the workplace. They want to instill fear in the heart of the target so that they will be paralyzed. Pure deer in the headlights paralysis, and they won't know what hit them. In fact, what they hit them with is so absolutely unnerving and destabilizing, the jaw drops along with the shocked look. And of course, the second ulterior motive there, the secondary motive, I should say, is to actually paralyze the work group too, because they don't want coworkers getting in their face. And so they are going to cower in fear, worried that they are next, and later they will probably become allies of the bully. But that's the screaming Mimi. They're going to curse and yell and throw things. To me, it's the stereotype of the prototype of the bully. But in reality, we know from our research, it's statistically the rarest form. Now, the most damaging family of tactics are implemented by the constant critic. And this type of bully is the one that's going to get you behind closed doors for plausible deniability. And by that, I mean, it's always going to be turned into a she said situation. The targeted person, the victim, will never be believed. And whereas since the majority of bullies are managers, the manager will always be believed. And since there was no recording, although there could be a recording, and since there's no record, although there could be a record, the target is usually not believed. And the primary tactic here is to actually misuse performance appraisal system. You're going to go in there, a typical scenario, new supervisor, veteran worker. They seek the veteran go-to expert, the one who's more technically skilled and really well liked. And for those threatening reasons, choose that person as the target. And they tear into them. I always thought the South African book Hyenas at Work was a great title because they talk about, tearing flesh from bone there. And these predators can be quite vicious. And behind closed doors, there's total deniability. What is the bully trying to control in this category, this theme? And this is why they're the most traumatizing. They're trying to control the person's own identity. They're going to crawl into their psyche and try and redefine the thoroughly competent person as incompetent. The third category that we chose for our book, Bully at Work, is the smarmy two-headed snake. Well, the two-headed snake, who happens to be smarmy and adopts passive-aggressive techniques and Jekyll and Hyde, backstabber, rumor mongerer. And when they're a supervisor, another technique they use is they fail to stop rumors. So that a person, what they're controlling, you see, with this is a person's reputation. So that if they're lucky enough to get to safety in another unit, they will be welcomed at the new unit with 1 foot in cement. They will be told, you can't do what you did at that last place because the supervisor called me and told me about your poor performance. So you've got that going against them. So that's the whole point of reputation. And beware of a hugger. The two-headed snake is an early hugger. While they're embracing you, they're basically just going up and down your rib cage looking for a place to stick in the shiv. That's the thing. Now, those first 3 types of tactics are acts of commission, of doing things to people. So Ruth and I were kind of stuck coming up with the 4th category, and the catch-all is basically this huge family of tactics that are all involved with withholding resources. And we call that type of bully the gatekeeper. And this doesn't have to be a boss. As you know, not all bullies are bosses. And this is where that powerful and narcissistic and superior in her head administrative assistant, or his head administrative assistant, lowly subordinate though they be in the org chart, this is the person who can actually grind everything to a halt, because every piece of information passes through their desk and they only let through that which they want to let through. And by filtering out information, key information, to hated people, and depriving them of vital information, they can actually screw many, many workers. And so what you have here is control of deadlines. Unrealistic deadlines create unbelievable stress. Another point about bullying, only the target gets the unrealistic deadline. Everyone else enjoys ample time to learn what to do and finish the project. Another thing that is commonly withheld is not just fraternization or allowing to be social, but allowing a person to collaborate on technical aspects of a project. So they're denied information from coworkers. They're not allowed to ask for help. How about assigning somebody a job out of their job class, a brand new arena for them, and then denying them training to go learn how to do that work? Again, it sounds like a budgetary restraint, but in fact, the budget is not tight for other people, but only for the targeted person. So you see, bullying is discriminatory in a way, just not necessarily always illegally discriminatory. So the gatekeeper controls everything, and they choose the most inopportune times, or from a sadistic point of view, the most opportune times to strike. They strike at a person at a time of great vulnerability, psychological or physical. First day back from chemotherapy, first day back after a divorce, first day back after a marriage, first day back to work from vacation, a very relaxing vacation, and the misery is then inflicted from that point on. So the timing is something that is a timing of the misery inflicted is something else that the gatekeeper controls. So they are the ultimate control freak. And by looking at the screaming Mimi, the constant critic, the two-headed snake, and the gatekeeper, we pretty much think we've captured the full range of potential categories of misconduct and wrongdoing that people can foist on one another. It's not exclusive, exhaustive, and intensive, but it helps you organize the thinking and it avoids long lists. Thank you.
Thank you. So the more concerning fact of what you've seen now is, as we know, most people experience workplace abuse. The reality, unfortunately, is when they report it, 4% who addressed it initially straight on with the perpetrator, something happened, 4%. If you've reported to your line manager or even to the ExCo team, only 4% did something. And even more alarming, what we're finding from the stats again, is it's the same with HR. So the biggest worry is that if you are a target of workplace abuse, the reality is, in 71% of the cases, is that you lose your job. How can we make this better? Kobus.
All right. We're gonna shift over to solutions, but before we there, just stating some of the most obvious issues to underline us introducing and maintaining, we call it, let's say, an anti-workplace bullying, or more positively put, a dignified workplace. So what are the costs of not having it, or let's say have an environment where abuse and bullying is rife, as opposed to having a dignified workplace? So there are 3 cases to be made out. First of all, obviously the business case. The old misnomer that management by fear creates better results has now been scientifically debunked. Management by fear is in fact a form of workplace abuse. That type of workplace abuse, the cost thereof can be assessed and measured. And it manifests itself obviously in higher levels of absenteeism, below expected productivity, because, for example, one little example is, it will take, in the case of a seriously abusive incident, it will probably take an employee 15 minutes, half an hour, if they're very good at resetting themselves, to process what had just happened and to be able to focus back on their work as such. So that's just one of a myriad of examples. Because of the lack of trust, there will be much poorer teamwork. Generally, you'll have a more unhappy work culture. There's higher stress and anxiety. Generally, it manifests in higher staff turnover. Because it impacts on, for example, the organization's reputation, you could also then struggle, if your reputation is poor out there, it could entail that you could fail to attract and retain key talent. People would look at this and say, we literally don't need this crap in our lives, and go look for greener pastures as such. Okay. The legal case essentially is built around compliancy. Essentially, we need to have programs in our workplace that then complies with the requirements of Occupational Health and Safety Act, of the Employment Equity Act. I haven't added it in here because it's more or less the same thing. We have our anti-bullying code of good practice in South Africa. If we don't have certain systems in place in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Employment Equity Act, the company can then, if we don't do whatever is reasonably practicable under the circumstances, once we've become aware of issues of abuse, then we as the employer can be held vicariously liable for the actions of, let's say, our managers or supervisors or employees as such. It's a very important consideration. employees who are the subject to abuse can refer this, or can refer matters to the Department of Labor, which means that we need to deal with a very uncomfortable situation of Department of Labor inspections, compliance orders, even fines. If we have situations of workplace abuse, obviously that could lead to, for example, constructive resignations by employees. It could play a role in CCMA disputes, labor court litigation, etc., etc., and there could be the possibility of damages claims against us. All of these obviously go without saying. The legal case is there, but I think most importantly is the ethical case. So it's our duty to try and make the workplace and the world a fairer and better place. Just to add to this, I don't believe, and Laura doesn't believe, that this is ideal. It's idealistic. Hopefully, in the greater zeitgeist of humankind, we now can use this concept of a dignified workplace, hopefully to start shifting our worldview away from the aggressive, paternalistic zeitgeist worldview and thinking towards an environment where we rather apply, I refer to the concept, ruthless compassion. In other words, we are still strong and tough with our employees based on when we refer to performance and conduct, but that we deal with that compassionately. In other words, we deal with it in a dignified manner. Your performance is poor. This is what we're expecting of you. How can we assist you in terms of training? We will help you through this process, rather than engaging in that employee from a managerial point of view, explaining to the employee how disgusted you are with them, or the manager is with him or her, and how the manager has been personally prejudiced by the poor performance, etc., etc., and then thereafter just leaving the employee to their own devices, or actually making it impossible for them to actually improve their performance as such. So one idea or concept that we apply there is this concept of ruthless compassion. In other words, let's be very clear what it is that we expect from employees from a performance as well as from a conduct point of view, and where they stray from the path, let's deal with that compassionately and in a dignified manner as such. And hopefully, by adopting these practices within our organizations, we can literally cast that little stone in the pond, which to then potentially contribute that more generalistically at home, maybe, some of our employees can adopt this approach and say, instead of just getting involved in conflict and violent disputes, maybe have a clearer understanding of self, of the people that we're dealing with, and a focus on solving the problem, and say, hey, we can actually solve problems. We can get people to perform better, to be more motivated, to do things in the best interest of themselves, of the whole, by dealing with these matters in a constructive and a compassionate manner, rather than applying fear and force, and forcing people to act in a way that we want to. Right. Thank you, Laura. What we're going to do is just very briefly, you obviously appreciate that this is it's a complex project. I'm just quickly going to sketch the broad outlines of what it would entail to then create a dignified workplace as such. We're obviously under no illusions to change the culture, let's say, from one that is fear-based and fear-driven to one that is based on dignity and compassion will take many, many years of constant, let's say, commitment to it, etc., etc. But the foundations or the basic aspects would include the following. Obviously, our goal would then be to create a dignified and equitable as well as a safe workplace. The question then is, how do we do this? Obviously, we as an organization need to adopt a policy and a stance towards workplace abuse, which in essence will entail a no tolerance approach. no tolerance approach does not necessarily mean that we dismiss people in every instance, but that everybody appreciates, from top management to all the employees, that the issue of workplace abuse is serious and the consequences thereof could be serious and even include a dismissal where it is fair. What we also need to do is then obviously guide employees, provide our managers, supervisors, and all employees with different tools so that they can then interact in a different way. So we need a code of good conduct or a code of conduct, and we need to explain to employees certain concepts as such. Okay, certain concepts such as the concept of consent. What we, for example, do, I do some work for the organization Africa Burn, which is a spin-off of the American Burning Man, and they have a very interesting concept called radical consent. So what they have as a policy and what they implement is this concept of radical consent, which we then weave into our solution to our other corporate clients as well. So the idea is we educate our employees and indicate to them and say, but listen, the mere fact that you are doing something which and nobody raises an issue about it does not mean consent. Consent means, for example, if, let's say, you want to be intimate with somebody and you ask them whether you can kiss them, and they say to you, hell yes, let's get it on. That is what we introduce. In other words, the concept of radical consent, radical and clear consent. If you ask somebody or engage with them and say, may I hold your hand, and they're reluctant about it and they're shy about it, the concept that we introduce in our corporates from a code of good conduct, or a consent point of view, is then that you then don't touch, you respect the person's privacy, etc., etc. And obviously, as part of this code, we introduce and we educate employees with regard to certain levels. In other words, the consent to kiss does not translate to, let's say, the consent to then touch somebody on their private parts or something like that. In other words, is a material educational concept or part of what we do when we engage in this, in changing the culture in a workplace. Okay, the main focus is essentially harm reduction. In other words, what we want to try and achieve is by means of education to make everybody aware of what is acceptable behavior and what is not acceptable behavior. Obviously, we're always going to deal with, let's say, the psychopaths out there. People are not going to change their ways. The people are always going to be bullies. People are always going to be aggressive and always going to have a negative impact. Unfortunately, in the real world, within our organizations, we will then need to look at ways to actually terminate our relationships with those people. Okay, the research shows that there are this grouping that won't change. But personally, we believe at the Positive Change Institute that there are many people who don't really understand the principle, let's say, the constitutional rights that people have. They don't understand the right to privacy and the right to the integrity of one's body. They're not sensitized to the fact that you cannot just go and touch people or make comments, certain comments to people. So we do believe that by educating these people, that we could have a positive effect. Okay, and that could have a major harm reduction or even prevention impact. A lot of focus then takes place there, but that's once again something that will have to take place over years, and we need to constantly monitor attitudes. We need to constantly monitor instances in the workplace to see whether we are effective with regard to an intervention like that. Okay. What we also need to do then, as far as a harm reduction is involved, is in labor law, employees have a duty of good faith towards the organization. They also have a duty to ensure that their fellow employees are safe. So what we do in the training is we remind employees of their duty to report any incidences of abuse. We have a major problem, obviously, the concept of, I don't remember the exact saying, but the idea of good men staying, or good people keeping quiet about issue, that is the only thing necessary in order for evil to succeed. So we remind employees that they have a duty to report any incidents of abuse. We motivate employees to get involved and not just to be bystanders as such. We remind employees that they have a duty, if they witness abuse, that they have a duty to partake in an investigation process and to testify at a disciplinary process as such. So a big part of our harm prevention strategy is then also to educate and train employees on what exactly their duties are, and to work together to create a safe environment, to protect each other, etc., etc. Okay, so that is an important intervention as such. What we obviously also need to implement is that we need to implement, once we have matters reported, we have issues or examples of abuse reported, we need to respond to that quickly and accurately. So we need to implement processes, especially our response processes. So when you see that, as soon as there's been reporting, we need to look at how we're going to respond to that, essentially by means, there are many little nuances there, but the focus would be on an investigation that needs to be done as quickly as possible. If required, there needs to be a disciplinary inquiry that needs to be followed. And part of our processes is that we need to continuously measure and assess the incidence of abuse in the workplace to determine whether we maybe need to, maybe escalate or do more awareness and sensitivity training, etc., etc. Remedial actions obviously could include things such as warnings and dismissals. Dismissals could include that we, in certain circumstances, might want to negotiate a settlement, even if it is that we, let's say, cannot really prove that the person did something, but maybe this is now the second or the third incident. People feel uncomfortable, people feel unsafe. We might even just get involved in that individual and cut a deal with them as such. Okay. And obviously included in the remedial action is, where we so determine, is that we then potentially go back to doing some more awareness and sensitivity training. All right. So that in a nutshell is what a program or a compliance program or initiative entails. There are two very important aspects. And Laura, if I may ask you just to move on to the next slide. In order to be successful, we need to get employees, either the targets / victims, or people that have observed, that have seen things. We need them to report that to us as the employer in real time, if possible, but as quickly as possible. So we need to have these issues reported, and this is a major problem. Employees, even victims, feel loath to report because of some of those stats that Laura has indicated. Generally, they might feel that they themselves might be victimized if they report it. They might feel that nothing gets done, will be done about it. They might just be generally fearful of retribution from the accuser, etc., etc. So the report, if we're going to be able to do anything about it, we need to get these reports of incidents of abuse as quickly as possible. Okay. Once we have these reports in, we also need to be able to respond to that as accurately as possible. Okay. Plus, from a top management point of view, we need to be able to monitor these responses. Okay. In other words, we need to ensure that, let's say, investigations don't quash matters, that they're not issues are not swept under the proverbial rug, etc., etc. Okay. And so what Laura and I have done, as far as that is concerned, is that we've developed an application which, first of all, motivates very quick and real-time reporting of issues of abuse. And we're going to show you quickly. It's the first time we're going to do it, so hopefully it will work. We'll give you an opportunity to quickly do an anonymous report yourself. But the whole issue is we've developed an app that's based on a QR code that will enable a victim or an eyewitness or somebody that has heard a story via to take their cell phones, to scan the QR code, and literally within a minute or two to be able to report a potential incident of abuse to management. We can set that app in such a place that report goes directly to, let's say, the MD or the board, or whoever we have in larger organizations. If you have internal audit, risk, whoever you set it up, they will get these reports together, for example, with HR. And once we've received these reports, the app then enables us in a very user-friendly manner to it guides the investigators into acquiring as much information as quickly, all of it recorded on this app in a very easy way. And the only way we can then, let's say, close a matter is if once there's been a proper investigation and have the information having been assessed by a legally competent person saying, sorry, there's no case, these and these are the reasons. Let's say, for example, Kobus falsely accused Laura of harassment or whatever. But it must be signed off by a legal technical expert, or it will say, for example, that look, maybe there's not enough evidence. There's still 2 people that haven't been interviewed. So let's go, can you just go and interview these people? All of that is done on the app. All of the information in case documentation is recorded on the app, and it requires that this process be managed as quickly as possible, all the whilst top management and your most senior stakeholders can follow this process in terms of the speed and accuracy thereof as such. Okay, so the reason for that is based on that 4% stat that Laura has referred to. Unfortunately, in real time, these investigations drag on forever, and later on, everybody lose sort of motivation for it. The people that need to do the investigation don't really know how to do it accurately, or they don't compile all the information, and it's just chaotic. So hence the introduction of the app. So if I may ask you, if you do have your cell phones handy, can I ask that you just try and scan the QR code there on that app? You can just put your camera on and let it focus on the actual QR code there, and click on the magnitude button, on the magnitude logo. Okay, so that will open that opens the app. So, but essentially what we can do in real time is you can have these QR codes on your notice boards, in reception, or wherever you want to. Whoever then experiences workplace abuse, whether it's employees, whether it's service providers, whether it's clients, they can then scan this and report a matter. So if you do have it open, I can't hear anybody. Let's hope that you do. Essentially, then what the app does, it gives you an opportunity as to whether you want to remain anonymous or not. So if you're working with me, you can just then press that you want to remain anonymous. It will then ask you to log a time, so you can log the immediate time. You can say today at 9:45. And then it's going to ask you who did what to whom. I can put in here that Laura has been harassing me for the 10th time now, asking me out. Sorry, Laura. And I've already told her that I was not interested. I don't need us to actually fill in the details at this stage in terms of who the accused, the victim, and the witnesses. That's not necessary. If you scroll right down, you can go to comments. You can say I have already informed Laura that I only want to be friends. You can, under the last little button, they say drop files, click here to upload. You can click on that and you can, for example, post a photograph of Laura or a photograph of whatever relevant evidence there is, and you can upload it in real time, and you can then submit that query, and it should say to you, submission successful. Thank you for shining light on the situation. You may close the page now. That then goes to whoever we set up on the app to be the receptor, to receive that, and we have a matter to investigate, which we can then manage with the rest of the app. So this is more or less where we stand. We've spoken about things in very broad detail. We've identified some of the challenges, and we've now also showed you some of the solutions. So thank you very much for your ears as far as that is concerned. Laura, do you just want to finish off before we go into the questions side of the presentation?
Thank you, Kobus. Yes, so that brings us to conclusion. I just wanted to thank you also for your time and your patience today. We have left QR codes if you want to take our details, and we would love to have some questions and open it up to the floor. I'll just go off share so I can see everyone. Thank you, Lindy. Are there any topics anybody would like to explore further?
Hi, Laura and Kobus. Thank you so much for the informative presentation. So I work in the transformation field, so heading up our diversity and equity employment councils. And I think the approach is really great. Awareness is something that needs to be done in order to create equitable workplaces, because, I mean, it's culture. It impacts, how we're being treated. And I think we need to demystify it. And I think it is very interesting in terms of your approach and in relation to the education and the awareness of it. So if you just have a look in terms of employment equity, looking at barriers, therein lies where people don't really know how, or they're not quite too sure, am I being abused? Am I being harassed? Is this a form of, a workplace discrimination? So I think, thank you so much for bringing that awareness. And I think your app is quite great. And it is quick and very informative. So thank you so much. And great.
Thank you, Venetia. And just to build on what you're saying, what we've actually found with the organizations that we've worked with, the feedback, because what we do is we train the entire organization, and we run obviously surveys to check the impact of the work, and the feedback that we've received is that they actually feel, and obviously not all the time, but in some of the in a fair amount of the time, we come in when there's a train smash, right? When there's big issues and the culture is not fabulous. We also come in the reverse of where it's a great culture and they want to make sure everyone feels safe and psychologically safe at that. But what we actually find is the employees come back to us and say, gosh, I feel so much safer and I know what to do now. So it definitely protects it, and it also makes the abusers, the perpetrators, they become aware of their behaviors as well. And they're no longer able to get away with it because now they know it's wrong and there's going to be consequences. So thanks, Manisha. That's a great build.
I think maybe just to add to that as well is, that unfortunately the targets / we're not supposed to use the word victim, but let's say target / victims, they normally completely at a loss. They don't understand what's going on. They don't know whether they're losing their own minds. It's a kind of, you know, kind of gaslighting concept. So where you have legitimate bullying, the first issue is that people just don't understand what's going on. They try the best, they try to be cooperative, etc., etc., and they question themselves. So yes, the definition and the starting point is very important. Obviously, like I said, there's a hell of a lot more to this than meets the eye, and unfortunately, part of it is a legal process. And the issue would be, if it's a he said, she said scenario, then very difficult to prove. So part of what we do in the awareness training, and as part of the harm prevention / reduction, is that we then unpack the issue in terms of law of evidence. You know, what ear and eye witnesses were there? What documentary evidence is available? What real evidence is available? You know, can you give us photos of where it happened, for example? You know, can you tell us what witnesses there were? So we also educate employees around that concept. We unpack the issue of making video or audio recordings as well. The concept is, in principle, that in South African law, if you're a participant in a discussion, you're allowed to record that. So there are these concepts that we get involved in, and literally, and it's amazing to see where, like I said, there's legitimate bullying. In other words, not false allegations of bullying. It's amazing how an impact it has on people when they get empowered and say, okay, I understand the concept, I understand what it is that I need to do, and I'm really appreciative of what is happening. Secondly, even in situations where we cannot, let's say there's difficulty with the complex legal onuses of proof and law of evidence as such, what we do is, where there seems to be a bona fide issue, nothing prevents us within corporate to actually just go into that section and have a discussion with let's say a potential perpetrator or an accused person, and say, listen, yeah, there's been rumors, there's been some discussions, etc., etc. Are they true? Invariably they'll deny it, and say, listen, yeah, please let us remind you of what the organization's policy is. Let's just talk about this concept. Please appreciate that you're not allowed to do this, and that, that there has been these issues raised around you. So there's nothing that prevents us from getting involved in those discussions as well, and making it a little bit more difficult for the perpetrators to actually act with impunity under the circumstances.
Thank you, Zanele. I see that you've got a question. I'm just going to read it for everyone. So how does one get access to the QR code for workplace abuse, for workplace use?
Are you referring to the app in general, or just dealing with it? If you refer to it generally, you can just, I don't know, be in touch with me and Laura. Obviously, we're just very sensitive to this forum, and that this is an opportunity to present, not necessarily a business forum for us. So maybe just to deal with Colleen, and if she's happy, then you can just be in touch with ourselves.
Okay, thank you. I was actually just wanted to find out if you want to use it for your employees, for example, like to get employees to get access to the app, or yeah.
So we had actually set it up for your organization, Zanele, and because we'd need to also make sure that the reporting goes to numerous people, so to HR, probably to yourself, etc., etc. So multiple points of it. So we literally tailor the app for your organization.
And then, in terms of the actual code, you can actually have an old school printout on your notice board, or it can be emailed or available at a certain place, which and any employee, or let's say any third party, like a client that maybe has received some sexual abuse or whatever, or a service provider or whatever, can go and scan it in off their phones and anonymously report an issue if they want to. They then have a choice. Do you want to, you'll see in the app, that do you want to do it anonymously, which the idea is that we become aware of issues as quickly as possible and as close to that happening, but they have a choice to give us more information. If you want to tell us who you are and give us a whole lot of information when you report an issue, you can do so as well. But that QR code, an old school printout, or a cell phone can read it off a computer screen as well.
Thank you.
Awesome. Are there any further questions? No, thank you. Well, we'd like to thank you for your time. And yeah, have a great Wednesday. And please reach out if you need any more clarity or assistance with this regard. So thank you from us.
Thank you very much, everyone, and especially to you, Colleen. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for managing that, Laura. Do we still have Colleen? Are you there?
Yeah, Colleen, are you there? We're still recording.
I think she's just managing the recording, yes.
I think she is, yeah. Okay, great. I'll give her a shout afterwards. I'll give you a call now. Thanks, Kobus.
100%. Thank you very much. Ciao.
Take care. Bye.
muggels. Is baie tussen in muggels. Okay.